The Supreme Court is solidly in Trump's corner. That's not me making it up. That's even ABC News. Crazy liberals, welcome to Doug in Exile. Shout out to the Quad Club. If this is your fourth episode that you've watched today, thank you. And of course, all of the money that I make this week is being donated to Rebuilding Hope. Link in the description if you want to donate or just watch these videos. You can give and it's free. Okay, let's watch on the Supreme Court. Look at this article I got. Here's ABC News. The Supreme Court's expansive view of presidential powers is solidly pro-Trump. That's their analysis. President Donald Trump may not have a perfect rubber stamp in the U.S. Supreme Court, but he is finding little willingness by the six-justice conservative majority to stand in his way. As the justices begin the traditional summer recess, the sweeping impact of their judgments from the recently concluded term in 56 cases argued and more than 100 matters from the emergency docket is coming into focus for the administration and the country. Despite the nation's narrow political divide, the court delivered rulings disproportionately advantageous to interests of the Republican political establishment in power. Now that's incredible good news. Translate, we're smoking them at the Supreme Court. This is Trump's longest legacy. I wanted to go back to the court to focus on it because there's so much swirl about the Epstein documents and Trump's tariffs and what's going on at the border and you funding Ukraine. And look, this is the gift that gives for a lifetime. Long after Trump's gone, those court picks that he picked are going to be leaning Republican for a lifetime. This is incredible good news. Okay, and I have another take on this, okay? Of the more than 140 matters that came before the Supreme Court, they're leaning Republican, which will also tell you that Democrats are flat out doing stuff that is unconstitutional to our Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, you can say that it leans to the right. It obviously does a little tiny bit, but the left is so extra constitutional that of course they're going to keep running stuff up that's going to fail over and over again by a normal court that cares about the Constitution, which we call conservative court justices. Time and time again, the Supreme Court came down on one side and solidly so on the very conservative side, said Erwin Chemerinsky, a constitutional scholar and dean of the UC Berkeley School of Law. Now, I've followed Erwin Chemerinsky and his Supreme Court opinions for about 20 years now. He used to be on the Hugh Hewitt show, and I really enjoyed his analysis. He was on the Hugh Hewitt show, Erwin Chemerinsky, with John Eastman, who's one of the 18 guys that got conspiracy RICO charges against them by Fani Willis. John Eastman basically lost his entire legal career because he was the one that came up with the theory that Mike Pence could go with an alternate bunch of electors in January of 2020. So Erwin Chemerinsky and John Eastman, I've listened to these guys for over 20 years now on their constitutional scholarship. But Erwin Chemerinsky is flat out a leftist, believes in a living, breathing constitution, believes in editing that thing, and now teaches at UC Berkeley School of Law and is really upset that all of the law is going to the conservative side. And I've never been happier in my entire conservative life, including myself taking a trip out to the Reagan Library and meeting Antonin Scalia himself back in, around 2004, I think it was. I shook his hand whenever his book came out around there. Most notably, the court imposed dramatic new limits on the ability of federal judges to check presidential power, coming 1 year after it established the sweeping preemptive immunity for presidents engaged in official acts, as the Constitution enumerates. Quote, federal courts do not exercise general oversight of the executive branch. They resolve cases and controversies, explains Justice Amy Coney Barrett in her historic opinion, allowing Trump to move forward with plans to end birthright citizenship. This is going to be the big one. If they end birthright citizenship, which has never come formally before the Supreme Court yet, if they end that, then all those illegals cannot have anchor babies and stay here. So that's what's in question. Do those babies indeed become citizens that can anchor the whole family here? Or merely being born here by illegal parents, does that not give you a right to citizenship, which has been the law of the land for more than a century? That is, that interpretation has been the law of the land for more than a century. In 14 other emergency appeals Trump brought to the high court, the justices granted his request, at least in part, on 12 occasions, because the 14 emergency appeals were them trying to overturn his executive branch of government, his presidential orders. First time that a lower court judge did that to Trump. So, of course, it went to the Supreme Court. They go, guys, you can't do that. Of course not. You're being extra constitutional, you Democrats. And then here's the conservative majority gave a green light to Trump's administration's mass layoffs of federal workers. We're going to get to this. This is a brand new update on that over at U.S. News and World Report. Supreme Court lets Trump move forward with large-scale staff cuts for now. This just dropped like within the last hour over there. Washington, there's a lot of ads over here on USA Today, so forgive me for this as I try and navigate this article. Washington, the Supreme Court on July 8th, today, lifted a federal judge's order pausing the Trump administration's large-scale staffing cuts and agency restructuring, boosting the president's campaign to downsize and reshape the federal government. That's right. The executive branch, lo and behold, has a right to cut down on jobs that fall under the executive branch. Who'd have thunk it? The Supreme Court, and not the Democrats. In an unsigned and brief opinion, the justices said they're not ruling on the legality of a specific reorganization plan, but the court said the judge was wrong to stop the administration from moving ahead with such plans. That is a lower court judge. The mass federal layoffs were challenged by a group of unions, nonprofits, and local governments who argued the administration can't make such sweeping changes without Congress. They said, and the administration is allowed to plow forward while courts are weighing in. They argued it will be impossible to restore the agencies, even if the challenge is successful. Quote, there will be no way to unscramble that egg, unquote. Lawyers for the unions, always the unions, guys. Remember, when they say unions, they mean Soviet unions. The American unions always lean left, whether if you belong to a union. My dad was in the carpenters union. My mom was in a teachers union. I'm not impugning you for being in a union. I'm against the unions because your dues go to them and they give to Democrats, regardless of what your voting is. They take your money and send it to Democrats as a block vote. That's my problem with unions. They do not help the people at all. You can't discriminate. Like lawyers for the unions and other challengers told the Supreme Court. The administration argued President Donald Trump doesn't need special permission from Congress to lay off thousands of federal employees. True. And it's not in the government's or taxpayers' interest to have to wait for the litigation to play out before cutting the workforce, lawyers for the Justice Department said. Every day, the preliminary injunction remains in effect. A government-wide program to implement agency RIFs is being halted and delayed, maintaining a bloated and inefficient workforce while wasting taxpayers' dollars, the Justice Department told the Supreme Court. U.S. District Judge Susan Ilston in San Francisco halted the layoffs, ruling on May 22nd approximately 20 affected agencies won't be able to function as Congress intended. She was rightly reversed. The Supreme Court is healing things. Trump is able to can more federal employees and cut that spending, helping reduce your taxes, helping make America freer. This is Trump's greatest legacy. Do you agree? Which branch of government do you think is Trump's best bet to use? Executive branch is Trump's presidential branch, but do you think Trump's executive orders are more important than his Supreme Court appointments for life? Thank you guys. Shout out to the Quad Club. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, all proceeds from you guys watching all of these videos all this week will all go to Rebuilding Hope. We are building wheelchair ramps for the poor that can't afford them out in Dalton, Georgia. All of that money goes to them. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene territory. Thank you guys for watching. It means you have given a donation already. I'm Doug in Exile.